It's 8 o'clock. So I'd like to call to order the regular Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, June 11th. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you. So in terms of my update, obviously it's second to last day of school. I think tomorrow is officially the last day of school, but so transitioning to summer now, which is great. And a reminder that starting this weekend, beach passes will be needed 7 days a week because we'll be able to staff up our gates and all that. So getting into full swing for the summer. Couple other updates. The town hall is continuing to go through its HVAC improvements. The hope is that the major part of the construction will be done by the end of the month, but it might take a little time in July to regulate the new system. So still going to be uneven temperatures throughout July probably, but at least there will be a system hopefully up and running by then. So anybody who's attending any meetings in town hall, just be aware that it might be a bit warm. I did want to make a comment that, you know, I think one of the struggles we have is we don't have a lot of places right now to go to that have large seating capacity and also have hybrid capabilities. So we're always trying to balance between, you know, having a lot of people in person versus being able to offer that remote option for residents too, which is a lot more convenient and a lot of people have requested. The schools, actually, Polson is going through some work over the summer, so that it takes that you know, situation offline. We're going to be having our meeting at the senior center later this month, which we are going to be upgrading the technology. I don't think the new stuff that we just approved with ARPA is going to be in place, but we can bring in Madison Cable Access to do some of the filming, so we can offer hybrid at the senior center. And then obviously Academy in the long run will hopefully be a venue that we can go to that has a larger seating capacity. And when I say that, you know, a 150-ish kind of range. And then we'll also have the technology available as well. So we're always trying to balance this, you know, offering. So if there's a little frustration about having to come to a hot and sweaty town hall, I think it's just trying to work through where we can offer, you know, hybrid. Also just wanted to mention, I think the Board of Finance is going to be talking about this Wednesday night an appropriation into our CIP. It's something that we've talked a bit about. We did one last year of $3.5 million. This is trying to take the excess fund balance and use it appropriately by investing in our capital projects, by infusing into the fund balance, or from the fund balance into CIP, you actually help future budgets also. So you may not have to put as much in future years as part of the Madison investment plan. So they're going to be looking at that this Wednesday, and perhaps possibly make a recommendation to us on what they think would be a good number, knowing that they want to keep a certain balance in the fund balance. So just wanted to raise that they're going to be talking about that this Wednesday night. And then just other things, there'll be the new charging stations that were installed. We're going to kind of formally take those online this month, and we'll maybe have a little ribbon cutting. We were waiting on a part for the new one down at Stop and Shop, but that has come in now, and that is up and running. So I'll send out more information on that, and the public can be aware that we have several other now public charging stations in town that are working, which is great. So that is it for my updates. Any liaison reports or selectmen comments? No?
Bad end of school. I mean, it's kind of a lot going on this week. So I know parents are there's a lot of stress in families with especially with graduating seniors. So with graduation and night in hand. So there's been a lot of work gone into that, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, congratulations to those who kids made it across the finish line. I've got a few more years to go, but
A lot of
yeah, there's a lot of after, end of year celebrations and things happening. Any other comments? Al, do you have anything?
The Academy Building Committee is looking forward to presenting to the Board of Selectmen perhaps at our next meeting on June 24th. They're ready with a lot more information and facts and figures, and hopefully we'll have them on the agenda at our next meeting.
Great.
I unfortunately will not be at our next meeting. I'm just warning you all. So my daughter is getting her white coat down in North Carolina. So a very big day for the Murphy household. So I will not be here.
Okay, great. All right, well, good. We'll see how. I know that the intention was to get a report back from them on the 24th. We're not going to be taking any kind of action at that meeting, I don't think. So we'll try to keep it to the 24th, but then see where we are, and then we'll probably be having some more conversations in July about Academy. So okay. Any other board member comments? Okay, great. Jeannie, any citizens comments now? Please raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment. And there's an opportunity at the end of the meeting also to make a comment.
No hands are raised.
Okay, great. All right, great. So we will move on to item number 6. I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. So moved. Second. Okay, any further questions or comments? No? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye, okay, great. All right, moving on to item number 7 is the update from the facilities department at the Polson School, HVAC emergency shelter generator project timeline. And I'm going to invite up Peter Anderson, who is our new facilities director, who's officially taking over July 1st, and also Bill McMinn, which I just want to give a shout out to, who is retiring after almost 40 years of service with the town of Madison. I know he's very excited about that. His last day will be June 30th. And we're obviously going to miss him. He's been just a steady force for many, many years for all of us as we've worked on different boards in town. Tremendous amount of service. We've had several send-offs for him so far. And I just want to commend you once again, Bill, for all the hard work you've done for the town and for the schools. We appreciate it and hope you enjoy your retirement.
Thank you, Peggy. It's been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure to work for the boards over the years. Yourself, as your leadership here, I loved it. It's great, having a great time. And I have to say, I'm very happy about Peter taking over. Couldn't be more happy about the situation. And I'm just here to watch Peter do his thing and put my 2 cents in, because I can't be quiet. So thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, and I know I think today we're hearing more about the emergency shelter, right? Not as the generator, and not as much about the HVAC project. Or why don't you just kick it off?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. We've gotten some of the design development figures back from or for the HVAC for Polson, and it's really in its early stages, so we're not really ready to present on that because there's a lot of adjustments that need to be tweaked here and there. But what I do have for you is some good information regarding to the emergency shelter generator. We've been working really hard behind the scenes, coming up with some different options for the generator. The generator still remains the same at a 1.5 kilowatt or generator, which is a 1.5. This is a generator that's going to supply power to the entire building. So there was the original option was to do it with a diesel generator. We've been investigating a natural gas generator, and actually just within the last 18 hours, a third option has presented itself that we're going to take a look at too, which will keep us in good regards in regards to FEMA. FEMA's requirements are fuel must be on site, where natural gas, even though the gas line is on site, it's not considered a fuel source on site. So we do need to adhere to the 24-hour rule of fuel on site, but the dual fuel generator is something else that I'm going to take a look at. I'm going to share my screen because there's a reason why we're starting to not or to fade away from the diesel only generator. So let me just get this here. I'm going to show you the footprint of the property. Let's go to here, and then I will. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Started to share, it never completed.
Oh, okay, let's try this again here. Anything yet? Nothing yet?
No.
Sometimes if you have two screens on, the computer gets very confused, so maybe shut off one of your
Try one more
screens.
time here, because I did say it went, and then it came back. Let me see.
It looks like it's working.
Okay. So what
There
we
we
have
go.
here is, I have shown the two red rectangles, one being the generator, the other being the fuel source. This is where they're located for. So as you can see, with a diesel generator, regardless of the first rectangle, which is the largest one on the right-hand side on your screen, that would be the generator location. The second one, which is to the left, would be the 10,000 gallon oil tank. Because the minimum requirement is 24 hours of fuel source. They also require a 4-day source on this. So that's 10,000 gallons. We'd have to have a 10,000 gallon tank located in the parking lot. We're trying to avoid that and taking up that much real estate in the parking lot. So that was the decision of going to investigate a natural gas, or now what it has come up as a dual fuel. If we do a dual fuel, that would be a natural gas / diesel generator, which would have in the generator 2,000 gallons or 24 hours worth of fuel in the generator, just in case the fuel, the natural gas line was cut. But our primary line would be natural gas. Beyond the real estate being taken up in the parking lot, the natural gas generator provides us with little impact to take the building offline to reduce our on-demand fee from Eversource. There's some information regarding you can do this with a diesel generator, but it requires an enormous amount of EPA scrubbing. So that's a huge cost. Some of the numbers that have come up with the diesel generator and versus natural gas is more expensive, but besides the fact that you don't have to, or you're buying a fuel tank with diesel, the numbers start to balance out a little bit. And by eliminating this 10,000 gallon tank, one of the things that we're not doing anymore is we're not storing a fuel on site in preparation for a natural disaster. Except for if we did go to the dual fuel, we would only be storing 2,000 gallons, which is a little bit more manageable. It's tough to get rid of 10,000 gallons of fuel if you're not using it and you have a timeline on this fuel. So what I'm trying to avoid the town having to do is to purchase 10,000 gallons of fuel, have it on site, treat it, and then if it's not used within a 2 to 3 year time period, we must get rid of it and or use it somehow. And now we're in the business of transporting that fuel from one place to another, which opens us up for a whole nother set of problems and concerns of spills and so on. If the fuel doesn't leave the site and it stays for a certain length of time, the fuel loses its ability to perform properly, and it breaks down and it starts to gel. And that's just when you don't want to have. That's when you'll have an emergency, and all of a sudden your generator doesn't work because you have bad fuel. So we're trying to stay away from that problem. And while we, create a warming cooling center, which the entire building can be used, people can go cool down, warm up if in the event of a natural disaster, take a shower. That is our justification here. So this is the update that I have so far on the generators. Again, really got thrown a curveball yesterday with the option of a dual fuel. I'm going to have more information for you in the short future on this. Sam's been working really well with me on this, and it's just there's a lot that's just come up in the last 18 hours.
So Peter, question I have is, I know that there is a huge lead time on these,
Yes.
or there was, I'm assuming it's still there. What is the timing where you would pull the trigger on ordering the generator?
This would be coincided with also the HVAC project. So the generator lead time is about 48 weeks, but the housing around the generator is about 98 weeks. So there's some considerations that we're putting into place. Where do we really want to house the generator, or do we want to fence it? The generators are designed to be outside. They can stay outside. This housing that goes around the generator is nothing more than a steel shed that's insulated to keep the noise down. But we can fence around this, and so you're not going to see it, but you might hear it more. Again, the only time that you have to worry about hearing it, of course, is in a natural disaster or during regular test runs, which are only go for about a half an hour every week.
So, so just so I understand this, so that you would only be using one of those squares, right? Because you wouldn't need.
The right hand square would be the generator.
Okay, and then you would, I'm saying, what is the plan though, in terms of picking and then ordering the generator, like over the next month or two, so we can get the order in?
Yes, we're gonna go over with Gilbane on that. Once we've decided on this whole thing with the new dual fuel, which we should have an answer for in the next couple weeks, and then we can kind of move forward on that.
Okay.
I'll bring it back to you guys. I'll talk to, I'll go again with the Board of Ed. We'll go over that information, talk to the superintendent, make sure that they're all good with it. But I really want to make the right choice on this, or at least, of course, the right recommendation for you guys, so that we have, again, these are huge units. These units they're going to be up to 14 to 16 feet tall. These are about 45 feet long and 14 feet wide. It's a big box that's going to go in the parking lot. And if we can avoid having another concrete structure, again, it's an above ground tank, and it's a large eyesore, and I'm trying to eliminate that.
Okay.
Peter, I'm glad you're thinking about noise, because these things really do make a racket, and I guess you're going to do whatever you can. I assume that location is where the generator must be. Is that correct?
Yes, there was an option to 3 different locations. I don't know if you can see my cursor up here. There was one up into this area here, which really wasn't going to work too well in the athletic department. I can understand why they didn't want to have that there. And the other one was down in here, and that wasn't going to work too well either, because there's a potential of future expansion over here. So the option to have it here was the best option, because all of these 3 options are the closest proximity to going into the electrical power, which is right here. So we're going to need to cut a line through here and come into this electrical panel, which is this is the main breaker location of the school. And that transfer switch must be located within 10 feet of it.
In terms of, so once you finalize then what you're putting into here, that will allow them then to finalize some of the electrical design for the overall project?
Electrical design remains the same regardless. It's always,
okay.
it's still at 1.5 kilowatts.
Okay. And then the expectation is you'll be coming back soon with the timeline for the whole HVAC rollout and all this.
Yes, as of yesterday at 4 o'clock, I was ready to recommend one of the 2 options, and then Sam called me up and says, "Hey, we got another option. I think it's going to work for you." And that's when we kind of was like, "Oh, geez, that is a good option. Let's take a look at that."
Okay.
Peter, is the housing, this shed kind of construct, is one better than the other? Is it better to have the housing as opposed to the fencing, and can we delay can you still put in the generator and just delay to put the housing on later? I mean, again,
that's a really good
we may
question.
not be using it, so.
Yeah, I believe you can place the generator beforehand. I'm 99% sure you can do that, because then the housing gets built around it anyway. But that's the housing for the generator is the longest delay or longest lead time. For whatever reason, these housing units for these generators take 98 weeks to get.
Okay. So I think then to be continued, right?
This
but-
is
Yeah,
good information here to have. You can, we have the location, we know we're going to be putting it here. We know why we have to put it here. Kind of a, in a high level recap, if we can really stick with the natural gas primary fuel generator, what the long-term effect does for us is also helps us reduce our electrical rate, because we can run the building during their testing. Eversource comes out with their demand rate testing, and they'll monitor your building to see what your power is, and we can shut the building down running off the generator, and then that affects our rate.
yeah, that I know that you guys do a lot of hard work managing that peak load,
Yes.
right? So being able to switch over. So you're saying like that's more difficult to do with the diesel, but with natural gas, it's easier.
You can, I'm not sure you can do it with a diesel unless you have the proper cleaning apparatus that is attached to the unit to clean the fumes.
Oh, okay.
So with the natural gas, there is no concern with that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the old car construct, but are diesels typically louder than natural gas, or are they all the same?
They're actually, so the diesel generators they're surprisingly quiet because of the speed that they run at. They don't run at a real high rate of speed. There are some generators that run at 3,600. That's not the ones we're looking at. This one runs at 1,800 RPM, and they're actually deceptively quiet. It's not to say that it's not a low rumbled hum that you'll hear. It's a big generator. This is a lot of power behind it. So it is you'll certainly, if you're standing next to it, you'll know it's running, but it's not. They do have to meet certain noise levels.
Okay, well, I guess it sounds like hopefully this hybrid option would be, I know we spent a lot of time talking about the problems with fuel storage and having to get rid of 10,000 gallons of oil. I've all along wanted natural gas for this. So this is a good thing. I think that we kind of minimize the requirements there. Obviously, there's going to be a cost impact, but we have to weigh that with the ongoing maintenance and management costs of the system as well. So
exactly, that's a great point, Peggy, because there's the cheapest option is sometimes not always the cheapest option in the long run, where we can take advantage of some of the uses of the natural gas on this in regards to lowering our demand rate, not having to worry about fuel oil going sour, not having to worry about transport fuel oil that hasn't been used. I mean, we haven't had any kind of, thank goodness, we haven't had any kind of hurricane that's required us to have a shelter in place or a warming or cooling center to be developed in the shoreline. But when we do, it's nice to have. But when we don't, we have to then we have a management issue of diesel fuel, and what are we going to do with it? We can't. It doesn't last forever, and when it goes bad, it's very expensive to get rid of. And then you have to so there's a two costs to this. One, if the fuel oil sat too long and it went sour, you'll have to pump it out at an expense. Generally, it's $8 to $12 a gallon to get rid of it, and then you have to replace it with new fuel. So you're going to be it's a huge expense. You'd be spending upwards of $20 to $24 a gallon to replenish your fuel.
yeah, which is
At
all right.
10,000
Well, I think this is a good update. I think we're all eager to see where we are overall with the project. So when that is ready, I think it would be good to come back and I'm trying to remember now, is Collier's advising us on that?
Colliers, yes, and also Gil Bain is our construction manager, who I've been talking to Nick Conte quite a bit about this,
Okay.
and all this stuff kind of blew up, like I said, in the last 18 hours. So they're working on getting pricing for this new generator right now.
Okay, great. And
Okay.
then you can come back with more of an overall recommendation
Certainly.
for the whole project, right? Because I think that's where I think a lot of people are eager to know, when is the work going to start in Polson? And how is this all going to like sequence out? Because I know that's a complicated discussion.
Certainly.
Okay, great. The next, that was just an update if the board members are all good. The next item also, Peter, I'll have you stay for,
Stop sharing my screen, okay?
yep. Item number 8 is discuss possible waiver of the equitable share of the cost to any homeowner wishing to connect to the new water line being installed for the Neck River Elementary School along sections of Margarettown and Green Hill Roads. So basically this is, the town is paying to install this water line, right? And so in theory, we have the ability to recoup some of those costs if homeowners choose to hook up to that water line service, because it's the line is going to be running outside of a number of private, residential properties. But I think in conversations, typically these things would be where we wouldn't necessarily pass on that cost, because obviously the homeowners living in this neighborhood have had a lot of disruption. They've had this new school installed, they've had a water line, it's changing the dynamics of their neighborhood. So this is you can view this as kind of a benefit to the neighborhood, at least, that they're going to have access now to public water. So the water company is just asking us, so if somebody chooses to hook up to that water line, they want to know, do we want them to build them basically and try to recoup some of those costs, or do we just waive it? And so then they just have a one-time fee that they have to pay. And I'll let Peter explain it a little bit more in depth in terms of how the fee structures work. But I think in discussions, Peter, if I recall, in my view, this is something we should be willing to offer. We've already built in the cost of the water line installation already. It's part of the project budget. I don't see any reason why we would try to kind of recoup these costs from these individual homeowners. So, Peter, I'll let you explain it better than I can.
So the water company I've been in discussions with, and we have to sign off, or Peggy would have to sign off as a representative of the town to say whether they're going to waive or charge each homeowner that who would like to hook up to the water line. That water line cost is determined at per running foot of frontage to the road. So there's sort of an inequity there, where if you have somebody that has 500 feet of road frontage versus someone that may have a back lot that has 50 feet of road frontage, someone's going to be paying, that person's going to, with 500 feet, is going to be paying more per foot, or not more per foot, but we're going to be proportionally more than the person that has just a driveway access to a back lot. Typically, the water company has found that most towns, they waive this cost at this point because the taxpayers have been taxed already on the project, and then you're going to then charge them to hook up to something that they've already paid taxes on as a municipal funded project. Any homeowner, though, would be responsible for a period. By the way, I want to also say that charging would remain in effect for 10 years from the install. After 10 years, there is no charge for that homeowner to hook up to the water. For the first 10 years, though, the homeowner would be responsible for an $1,160 hookup fee, plus they're responsible for any of the trenching on their property to bring the water line to their house. After that, after 10 years, it's a $210 fee to hook up to the water line. And again, they would then also be responsible for any of the trenching to their house. So by waiving the fee, they're referring to the actual install of the water line that the town has paid for in the street.
And just curious, like, if I know we talked about this a ways back, but what would the cost be if somebody
So
had
what they would do is
frontage?
they have a rough estimate of what the town has paid at this point. They would take that number, calculate it out times the length of the water line that they installed. So for example, I think it's 2,600 feet, and it would be 100 if the town's responsibility at this point, they're estimated out to be $150,000. They would divide. They would calculate that number up per square foot, divide it by 2, because there's people on both sides of the street, and that would be the cost per foot for anybody to hook up to the water line of frontage on the road.
That's if we didn't waive.
That's if you don't waive it. That's correct. If you do waive it, the homeowner would still be responsible for the $1,160 hookup fee
Right.
plus trenching to their house.
So this is something where, you know, as a board, we would waive this. We can vote at our next meeting on this, but I feel this was pretty straightforward, but just wanted to have the conversation. You know, with the board on this. Any questions or?
So this one might be better answered by Bill. When they did the extension on Green Hill, they ran the, because of the new tank. What did we do there? You remember?
You mean when they ran it for the new school? Peter did some research on that. When you ran it for the new school, Peter, did you, I think I got my information from Peter.
Yes, yes, the town did not waive it. They had a different contract with the Connecticut Water Company, which was the cost was divided equally amongst the residents of the town. So if there was 10 people that lived on the road and the cost was $100,000, each person paid $10,000 to hook up to it.
But didn't you also tell me, Peter, no one did it after 10 years? They waited till 10 years to do it.
Yeah, there's some, there was, I don't think anybody hooked up to it until 10 years later.
I mean, that's a pretty significant cost if you're saying it was like $10,000 or whatever.
It's definitely a significant cost.
Mhm.
It's a big cost. I mean, in particular, anybody that lives on a corner that may have like 800 feet of frontage, because if the water line goes around the corner and down the road, that could be a huge expense for someone.
Bruce, is that what you asked me? Because I wasn't following you on the tank.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about precedent and what we've done in the past, and are we doing something different? Which, of course, we can do. I just want us to be aware of it.
Well,
and arguably we didn't recoup anything from that because no one did it, right? So for 10 years, we just, you know, we never got any money back, right? Because that's the whole
Peter, say
point.
the
We're
nature of the
recouping. It's
agreement
for
is different this
recouping our
time.
costs.
Peter,
We
so the
have
nature
run-
of the agreement is different.
Yes, the contract from Connecticut Water Company was based off of running foot, not division of equitable share.
We have a long history. We have history of doing other water lines, but for different reasons and different projects. I mean, I know of one that we did on Garnet Park, but that was significantly different. We did it, you know, to service those, you know, the Garnet Park people, and we did it for the homeowners. We're doing it for our project, and I think it's a different project. So I don't know if precedents can be set, for each project. I think they're all different.
Okay. Well, I think as long as we're clear that when we say waive, it's not cost-free to the homeowner. That there would be some fees that they would have to take care of, but other than that, I don't object to waiving the parts that you've talked about.
You're basically waiving the main line. You're not waiving any hookup fee.
Still pay the $1,160, right?
That's correct. Yeah, they will be responsible for $1,160 to hook up to the water line for a period of 10 years. After 10 years, it goes down to $210.
It's not $1,160 each year. It's $1,160 one time.
No, just to hook up. Right. That's correct.
Yeah.
But they're responsible for everything that they bring onto their property.
Right. The trenching could be significant, right? I would think that cost could also be rather significant.
Yep. Yes, it could.
I think we just don't want to minimize that.
It'd be very expensive to hook it up. Just the trenching, the water, the plumbing. No one's going to do it unless they have an issue with their well, would be my assumption. And maybe somebody does. So, we need it. We're doing it because we want to put it in for the school. I think it's important that we have city water, regulated water, monitored by the Connecticut Water Company for the school. I think it's very important. And for fire protection and
Fire
safety.
protection, yeah. We have a steady water supply for the fire sprinkler system.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I haven't heard from everybody, but I'm content to vote in favor of this today if everybody else is.
I have no objection to that.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good. All right, so what I will do is I'm gonna now turn item number 9 or 8, a motion. So I'd like to make a motion. We don't have to open up the agenda, right? Because it's an agenda item. So I'd like to make a motion to approve a waiver of the equitable share of the cost to any homeowner wishing to connect the new water line being installed for the Neck River School along sections of Mungertown and Green Hill Roads, and allow the first select woman to sign any associated agreements with that waiver.
So
Moved.
moved. Second.
Second. I'll take the second if you want.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? All right, with that, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, great. All right, that passes. Good. No, I think it's good that we kind of put that to bed. And then they can kind of move forward with that so people know what their choices will be once this is all completed. So thank you for that, Peter.
Welcome.
And moving on to item number 9. So I will ask, I think Stacy's joined us for this. And this is an update on the ARPA funds. If you recall, a couple months ago, we said we would target June to know where we are on the balances with a lot of these projects, whether or not we think the project is going to get completed in time, or whether or not we've actually use all the money. Some of these projects we actually ended up not using as much as we had budgeted for. So, and then also wanted to talk a little bit about some other projects that have come forward. So with the balances that we would be able to address, and this is not a complete list. There's just kind of summary in the document that received of some new things that have kind of raised their hand, so to speak, for this funding. So we could talk a little bit high level about those with the idea that we would come back with more specifics at a meeting in June or July, so that we can then go through and kind of prioritize those new projects. So Stacey, I don't know if you want to raise the list.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared to share it, but I can do that. Hang on.
I mean, everybody has it in front of them, I guess. This is the schedule.
I have it.
It's not okay. This is not showing. Like
Yep, I'm getting it.
So,
Now, do you
yes.
see?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do it. Yep.
Is it big enough?
I'd make it a little bigger.
Okay. Okay, so I could walk you through it and then you guys can ask questions, but I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. The original amount, obviously, we all know we got $5.3 million. All the approved projects through the boards, through the committee, through the boards after the committee was dissolved, came to 5.2. And we had a balance of 121,000 before we act on any action items today. The 5.2 is also change for any returned balances that happened before that you all voted on. So we start with the 121. We gave every project or department head, anybody who received funds, we gave them an internal deadline of June 1st. We said we want to see that everything's committed, that you're actually going to spend the money, because we do not want to risk that a project is under budget and now we won't have time to reallocate those funds to another project. We only have until December 31st of 2024 to commit the funds. We don't have to spend it until 2026. So as long as we're committed to a project by December 31st of this year, we're good to go. But again, we told everybody we need to know where you are June 1st. That being said, there still are some projects that we're going to continue to look at. We may need another month or two, and that's why we gave the early deadline of June 1st. So after June 1st passed, these are the projects that came back saying, okay, everything is encumbered. We can return these balances. So we're on your agenda today. I believe one of the items is to return the 159. Yeah, item 11, to return the 159 to the bucket, basically. So then we take the 121 after you make approve this agenda item, your number will go up by $159,000. That being said, there is also this project that has been on here. It was approved way early on for a wastewater treatment study. Peggy wanted to bring it up again and have a board discussion to see if we do want to move forward with the study. So after you all decide that, we'll know what that number is after you make that decision. So assuming, and this is just for presentation purposes, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but assuming we say, all right, let's hold off on the wastewater study. Maybe we'll do it in the future. We're not going to do it right now with ARPA funds because we really want to commit these funds. We will now have $331,000 as our balance. Again, moving target, there are still project balances. Hopefully we will just keep updating you and cleaning things up. Down here.
Just real quick, so this does not have the downtown lighting project number still, right? Because that could be a big
down
swing.
here. Yep. I was going to show you guys that afterwards.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. So now we have 331. There are 3 requests that have already come in. So we're showing them. We're not going to take action on them tonight or this morning. Oh my God, this morning. But we could discuss them just because they did come in. We all know about the band uniforms for the Board of Education. The senior center is looking to upgrade some ADA upgrades to the bathroom doors. And then we did get a request from the Board of Ed side for community pre-K consortium program that came from the assistant superintendent. There are other items that we just don't know amounts yet, and that's why we opted not to take action on any of these today, so that we'll have the bigger picture. But as of right now, we officially have the 109 requested. So if we approve that at a minimum, which I know it's not on the agenda, our balance would go down to 222,000. That being said, as I keep saying, there are project balances that we're not sure. They may come back to us and say, okay, we're done. 3 big ones that we know about, and Peggy just alluded to, was downtown center. So we have about, for 2 pieces of the project, there's about 117,000 out there. Rob Russo, working on finalizing that number and seeing what that number is. We have been told that there will be some kind of funds or amount of funds returned, but we just don't know that number yet. So we didn't want to guess. So
Yeah,
we left this
that's more related because the project is almost done. We're still waiting on one piece to get those last 2 poles down. But the problem is Comcast has not billed us for any of their cable work. Still, we keep begging them for an invoice. So we have some estimates of what we had forecasted, but we still can't seem to get an invoice out of them. And so we're just trying to get that final number from them. That will swing this one way or the other, I think, for that. And I know Rob has been trying to do that. So that might come back, the next couple weeks possibly. And we've been hounding him for months now. But that, if the invoice ends up not being as bad as we anticipated, then that could, replenish quite a bit of money back into the account. And then obviously the geothermal until it's all done, we won't know what the balance is going to be for that project. And then I think the downtown lighting, which is mentioned under consideration, that's the one that we as a board decided to punt to ARPA, that was in the budget originally. The EDC is going to be presenting to us what their recommendation is at our June 24th meeting. So we'll have a number. We had been soft circling, I think $26,000, what was in the budget, because that what it cost us last year. So we'll see what the EDC comes back, but that number could be 26,000. And then the decision had been to find a more sustainable way, project, funding for that going forward at a more cost-effective project. I wanted to talk about the ARP wastewater thing real quick, and then we can have a general discussion just to give you some background. This is the downtown. It's not just we're doing a townwide wastewater treatment study that is funded through EPA funds, and the town has paid for a chunk of that. But this is the just focusing on downtown, and it was really going to be like a needs assessment. We started last summer drafting an RFP. We tabled it for a while because I think there was a lot of discussion about what is the study going to accomplish? Do we wait until the wastewater treatment study is completed for the whole town, the facility study? And then the EDC obviously would like to have this done. So this is basically going through and looking at the downtown area and figuring out where is there a problem, because I think there's this understanding that there's a problem, and there's been conversations for 20 years that we have limitations, but I think we've never really studied the area as a whole. I mean, there was some work done like 25 years ago, but a number of properties have actually upgraded their septic systems since then. So we wanted to kind of step back and say, okay, what's the lay of the land today? What are the real issues impacting economic development downtown because of the septic constraints? And so we have kind of a draft RFP, and I think Trent might be on this call as well. And we can pull the trigger on it. We just haven't done it. And I'm just debating, is that a big priority for us right now, or would we rather use this money for something else? So I'm leaving that as a conversation to the board. I know it's a looming question. And Trent, maybe you might want to talk about some of the, ongoing issues with downtown.
Yeah, sure. Good morning. Yeah, so Peggy, just to clarify, I think where we're looking at with the needs assessment, it was going to be an addendum to the facilities plan, wastewater plan. And, a portion of the needs assessment was going to be qualitative data, maybe surveying some of the property owners to see maybe what are their ideas of building out their current business or facility or building, and what that need is. But yeah, the other part of it was going to be to assess the current conditions of the downtown area. And, it's a dense area in town. The soils aren't favorable in most cases for sewage disposal. And, there's the size of the lots, right, that can also be limiting. I think the only good thing is that it's public water downtown. So you don't have to have like a 75-foot setback from any potable water service. Some of the things we've been experiencing, probably on both ends, as we know, or maybe not, Starbucks is currently closed. That plaza has been experiencing some limitations, and it's because of poor repair, but it's also it's heavily used, right? I mean, and then we have Jersey Mike's going in there. CVS is not that big of an indicator of the flow there. So they're going to be looking, and they're in the process, maybe at a phase 1 right now, of looking at a repair to that plaza. What that septic system is going to look like is still to be determined by the engineer. On the other end, you do have, on the other end, meaning like RJ Cafe and Bistro. The soil there in the back, adjacent to Stop and Shop, it isn't quite favorable. There has been an upgrade to the septic system there for that particular building. But again, I just think because of the use of the building is important. So there are some constraints there. I can't really speak to economic development, but I think that needs assessment would address, what do the property owners want? What's the need, and what does that look like? And ultimately, this would have to go to RFP. I don't think it can be an addendum to the wastewater facilities plan. But that's
I think we kind of decided that it was really needed to be a separate exercise. That's why we kind of held off on it, thinking we're going to have to just kind of go out to bid on a specific project for this that's separate from the overall study.
That's the overall
So
study.
I guess the question is, we can launch that, and get it going over the summer. I just, wanted to hear the board's thoughts on this.
When is the overall study meant to be completed? Because would that then dictate when we would potentially start this one?
Well, they're getting their final report together, right? So they're going to be coming back to the board over the summer, I think, probably later this summer. I don't think that's gonna have a big impact on this, because that is really focusing on residential problem areas, correct, Trent? Like, there's some data in there that's helpful that we could use, but it's not like they're gonna be. I mean, unless you have.
Yeah, I mean, the areas of concern are more residential. There's very little commercial in the areas of the scope of the project, but downtown is briefly mentioned in the wastewater study as an area that needs to be further investigated. Again, where the study of this needs assessment of downtown comes out of, I think the EDC is going to be an important role in that as well. And
I mean, we could basically try to do this with the planning reserve later, rather than tie up. If we're gonna do ARPA funds, then we would need to finalize the RFP this summer and put it out there, and contract with somebody, I think, in the fall.
My recollection is that we had some informal discussions about the appetite for the property owners in this area to be part of this project and to carry the financial burden, and it's at some level on it. It doesn't seem to me like we would need to spend $50,000 to get feedback from the property owners. Are they even willing to consider a project like this? And maybe that feels like the place to start.
You're suggesting Bruce put some skin in the game to have each of the property owners?
Yeah, do the property owners want to see this type of improvement downtown? Because presumably the property owner is going to bear some, if not all, of the cost.
I mean, I think that is this is going to be a complicated improvement. Would we have to create some sort of sewer improvement district or whatever, or special taxing district to fund this? I don't know. I mean, they talked about this, like I said, probably 15, 20 years ago, where they looked at different options. I think right now, I just wanted to step back and say, is there a problem now? Have enough, property owners made improvements to their existing systems that, there's kind of this understanding that there's a restraints, but is there really restraints now? Because people have made the investment. So, and I don't know if it would cost 50 grand or not. We just kind of put a placeholder there for this.
I'm very much in favor of us finding the political will to move forward on this study somehow. The discussions that the town engaged in the far distant past, and it was more than 15 years ago, much further back than that, the conversation always got stymied and stalled over who was going to pay for potential improvements. Whether those improvements to the downtown wastewater treatment would be spread across all taxpayers, or whether it would be simply spread across the downtown property owners, or whether there was a mixture of the two. And that's where the conversation stalled many decades ago. And I think if we choose to move forward on this, it's hard to not get the cart before the horse here, but I think people's willingness to engage in this conversation is going to be dictated by whether or not how much they're on the financial hook for it. And I don't know how to get out of this conundrum. I don't think we will have a meaningful discussion as a community if people aren't sure what the fiscal impact on them, on the personal fiscal impact is going to be on them.
Was the only way to find out that impact by doing this study?
I mean, I don't think this is going to come up with solutions. This is just going to identify.
Or not
this
a
is
problem.
an assessment. Yeah, this is going to really kind of clarify the problem under today's, because so the wastewater, I think the conversation, we're also going to be having the same conversation for the wastewater facility study, the town-wide one, right? Because there's going to be areas of concern identified in that. And we're going to have to talk about what's our plan to fix those things in the future, right? And some of that is going to have to involve some sort of funding source. So it's going to be the same conversation there as well. This is different because it's economic development really, versus environmental. Because I think really, and Trent, correct me if I'm wrong, but really it's the environmental concerns, right, that are driving the other study in terms of the areas of concern.
Yes, correct.
I mean, we can do
economic
this.
development is pushing for this. Are the businesses pushing for us to do this too?
Well, well, that's a good question. I think, you know, I don't have the best understanding from all property owners down there of their perceptions of wastewater disposal, but there's a handful that I know of who would like to have or see some change. Now the change that what they want, you know, I think that needs to be presented, like Al said, from a cost perspective and what that looks like. And I think this study, I think first it was gonna capture an area, Bradley Street, Wall Street, Boston Post Road, and you know, some of that. And what are the existing conditions, right? The lot size, the existing septic systems, what those septic systems accommodate, if it's a office, if it's a restaurant, if it's retail, and look at and then also survey the property owners to say, well, and I'm just hypothetically speaking, you know, if there was to be an upgrade, you know, what would you want for your particular property? Is it more seating for the restaurant? Is it to build out the retail more, or is it to change the use of your building from office to X? And then kind of they would collect that and then look at some conceptual alternatives to what can fit and accommodate that design flow based on the perception and the expectation and merit for more options for sewage disposal. So I think it's certainly a roundtable discussion that needs to happen.
Well, maybe that's, so Peggy, you suggested using planning money, which I think we're in this gray space of undefined, right? We don't know where we would put it. We don't know who wants it. We don't know what it would cost. And maybe the place is to have that roundtable, to start speaking with the property owners in the affected area, saying what would you hope to see, if anything, out of this? Because I don't think we need to do a study to say there's a problem there. We already know that. The question is, what's the solution?
Yeah, Bruce, I'm with you on this, and I'm trying to be very supportive of Trent here. I think everybody's going to be in favor of this if the cost is shared with somebody else. I think people are going to not express support for this if they think the whole cost is going to fall on themselves.
So I tend to agree with that, although I would say that anybody who's recently done a system is probably not going to want to be a part of this in any form. So I mean, if we take the apartments on Bradley, I can't imagine they're going to, a circumstance where they abandon that system to hook into a town-wide or an area-wide system. Even if it were free, I can't imagine they would do it.
I wanted to ask Trent. Trent, what would you like to see happen here?
From the property owners that have expressed, you know, their concern, it gets complicated when talking to them about potential repairs because of the soil. And I think, Bruce, to your point, you know, the apartments versus to where Boston Post Road is and around the area adjacent to Stop and Shop, different soil, different proximity to inland wetlands. You know, it gets a little tricky. What I like to see, I think in a perfect world, obviously there's there's probably some form of a community wastewater system. But then, you know, you get into the operation and the cost of that continuing for years on end and what that looks like, you know, maintenance and operation of that. And, you know, obviously it would have to be a DEP system, but I don't know what the size of that looks like. I don't know what the cost of that looks like. But I think that that's what would probably best in terms of wastewater disposal would be some form of a community system down there. Location, I can't tell you. And, you know, it's going to be a lot of pipe, and it's going to have to be force main to somewhere else, conveying it from that area.
So one thought I have is, I mean, originally this kind of spun out of a request by the EDC and when Sherry was here also. Why don't we table this? We don't have to make a decision today. And then I can kind of go back to EDC and talk to them a little bit more about this, because I would hate to pull the funding away right now, because it is, at least is there sitting for them. Going to the planning reserve is now you're competing with other things, and then that has to get approved by both boards also. I think we all agree. I think it would be helpful to have this, and that was the thinking behind this, right? The question is, you know, is it urgent enough to use ARPA funds for it, I guess is the question, right? So if the board is okay with it, let's table it. I'll go back to the EDC and talk to them a little bit more about this, how important, what a priority this is for them. And then we could make a decision on this, you know, the next time we go through the ARPA review. Because we can pull the trigger on an RFP pretty quickly. We have something drafted, and I think the EDC had weighed in on that last year, right, Trent? And I know that was more Sherry was kind of driving that bus when she was here with us. So we can regroup a little bit and I'll bring it back. It sounds like there's support for looking at this, right? The question is, do we want to use this funding or just kind of, you know, take our time a little bit more with it and use another source?
Yeah, and the cost wasn't quite 50,000, but again, I think if we have the roundtable discussion, the cost of what we thought would be an addendum may creep up closer to that number, because the needs assessment was a little under 24,000.
Okay. All right. So why don't are you good if I bring this back with a little bit more information?
Yeah, could we get the RFP resent to us? I'm sure we probably saw it once, but I've long since forgotten what it said, just to get a better sense of the scope and what the deliverable is.
I sent it to you yesterday, Peggy.
Yeah, but I'm going to make sure that's the most recent, because I know Sherry and I had worked on something that was more a little bit more focused, I think. So I just want to make sure it's the most recent version. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of where we had landed with Weston and Sampson, right? But then there was, we did try to make it, Sherry had spent some time trying to make it more of this kind of needs assessment approach. So I will get the most recent version and send it out. And it did go through EDC, I think, too. They gave comments. So, all right. You know, the part of this is we just lost the champion, right, for it, because we don't have an economic development director. And we have a new EDC board chair who I know was supportive of this, but he has not really weighed in on this since he's taken over as board chair. So, okay. So we will, to be continued. So just
I have a math question about the table here for Stacy.
Why did we give back $1?
Yeah, no, it's not the $1 and it's not the $3. It's the bottom total. If we could scroll down to the bottom, Stacy, the 462, does that include the last three numbers, the 240?
It does.
It does. So that is with the
Fiction at
exception
this
of
point. We
maybe
don't know yet, right?
So this is a number that we're working with. Actually, this is a number, or this, yeah, this is a number if everything above it happened. But this 462 is still unknown because of downtown and the geothermal and even other projects that I didn't list. But so the 222 is more of a number you want to focus on right now.
Okay, so the 222 is a pretty firm number.
Well, wait, does that
If you
include the 50
approve-
coming back?
Sorry.
Does that include the 50 coming back?
It includes the 50 coming back, and it includes these 3 items coming out. So
So I
if we
think
don't do that,
Right,
we will
Okay.
have 121 plus 159, which is
Right.
281.
okay. That's
Okay,
really
so-
the number we have to work with right now is 281.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, just for the sake of you, because I know you love doing this live, Stacy. Could you leave the 50 in like we just talked about? So make that a text or okay, and then go down and can you just turn the 80, the 27 and the 2000 into text so they don't get added up? So that we can see them, but they don't get added up or do that.
Is that okay?
No?
No?
Maybe put the in the descriptions, so in column A for those lines, put in the dollar amounts, just so we don't lose sight of them. And what I'm trying to get at is what is the real number that we're starting from?
81.
Yeah.
Well, it's 281 kind of given with possibly another 240-ish on top of it. I think we need to keep both numbers in mind as we have our discussion, right?
And even with those 3 funded, though, it was still 222, right? So there's still a significant amount of money that we haven't allocated.
Right. Yes, yes, it's just how significant is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
And frankly may grow. I mean, with with those italics below, the 3 projects, we still don't know that.
There are some other small balances we don't know. So I agree. I think this 281 is a good number of what we're working with right now.
And Stacy, do you have a probability you can assign to the $240,000? Is that a 50-50?
I don't know, Bruce. I wouldn't want to even guess. You know, I don't know. I'd have to ask Billy for the geothermal, and we'd have to get more info from Rob on downtown.
I mean, I
Okay.
think geothermal, I would assume that we're not going to see much left there because these projects always have a last minute rush that comes in. So I think that's going to be pretty close to budget. And downtown is we will see some money, but Rob seems to think it's we don't have an estimate.
Yeah,
So-
you know, and also to clarify downtown, this is the ending balance right now. We still have encumbrances out there that could be less. So this balance could even increase. So I wouldn't even want to guess at what the balance is. You know, the amount would be at this point.
All right, so we're talking about a number that's somewhere around 300,000, 280.
Yep.
Well, at 300, yeah, which may grow also.
Correct.
Right. I mean, I think at the end of this, we're going to have a plan to pull the trigger on something in the order of 240,000 on so that we don't lose it. But it sounds like we really can't begin to allocate against that 240 today.
No, I think
Right.
the intention is not to vote on any new projects today.
No, I
Um,
understand that.
yeah.
So I'm sorry. When I say allocate, I mean we're penciling in. We're not chiseling into stone. We're just penciling in
Right.
numbers.
Right. I mean, downtown lighting is another 26,000. The chamber kiosk, we're waiting on a number. This was actually discussed way back when during the pandemic. And then I think with the turnover of the staff of the Chamber of Commerce, it just kind of got sidelined. And so that will hopefully have an updated number for it. It's not going to be huge. And then the community board was basically another thing that we've been talking a lot and overall when we talked about signage in town. And this would basically be similar to what you might see in front of Clinton Town Hall or in Old Saybrook. When you get off the exits, they have an electronic community board so they can put activities and events and things like that. A lot of towns have put these in. So we're getting an estimate on what that would look like. And interestingly, I met with the people from our regional economic development thing. One of the first things they said is, you need to have one of those boards like Essex or Old Saybrook has off the highway, just telling people everything that's going on in town. So this would be right in front of the ambulance. So we should have a pricing on that in the next week or two. And then the ABC House, I know that Bruce, you had some conversations with them. They had actually reached out to me a ways back about ARPA, but they were still early stages in their project. And as they talked about when they came to our board 2 months ago, they're doing a big renovation project at the ABC House. And so I think they've approached again the board about a potential assistance on that project. So they will need to submit, a request for that as well. And we would hopefully have that the next time we would go through making decisions on remaining balances.
Right.
So I don't know what that number is.
I have two other thoughts I'd like to capture in the to be considered column. One is this idea of a small amount of money being set aside for mental health consultation copays. So this is mirroring the Clinton program. Full disclosure, my wife brought it up. She's a therapist, but Clinton has set aside ARPA money to help people who are seeking therapy to offset some of their out-of-pocket expenses. And the other one,
who would manage that?
So the Clinton program, the individual registers with the town, and then it's all through the finance department. And then when the person is registered, they notify their therapist. The therapist then sends an invoice to the town of Clinton. Clinton cuts a check back to the therapist for the amount of the copay or deductible.
So is there an approval process, or we're just automatically, if they apply, we're going to?
Yeah, so the people in Clinton are self-attesting that they're seeking therapy, that it's related to the way COVID has impacted them. And the town is then saying, okay, fine.
For any amount, if someone has a copay of $100 or $25, they're just approving it.
Yeah, and of course the fund would be finite. So it would, let's say we set aside $5,000. I don't know how much Clinton did, but let's say it was $5,000. Once that money was gone, it was gone.
So the one thing I would say is we can only do this through the end of this calendar year. So again, we have to commit all the funds by December 31st of 24.
Right. But are you saying that they would also have to be used by the end of this year?
Yeah, because how else would we commit it? Like, we need a contract, this is a little unique, but I would think we would need to. Yeah, I'll have to think about that one a little more. I would think we would need to commit and use them before December 31st.
Stacy, do you know the finance person in Clinton?
She just left. I can sure. Yeah, they
Oh,
have.
because of this.
I don't know if they have an interim, and they have a new town manager too. So it's kind of, they're in flux right now. But I'll reach out and see what they did.
Yeah, and I think that my thought, because I know other towns have basically given, essentially donations, right? So I'm wondering if we could set this up as like a special account under Youth and Family Services, right? So this would be a budgeted, amount of money that we would then give to them. I think there's a way we could figure it out to make it work. why don't we find out more about the Clinton project and then, and I'm assuming, Bruce, you're talking, what, $5,000 or something? You're not talking
Well,
about.
I don't, order of magnitude, I can't imagine it would be much more than $5,000 or $10,000. Really would be, I think, two things out of Clinton. Is it working okay for them, or is it just a big nightmare?
Yeah.
And what sort of subscription rate do they have on it? Are they seeing a significant number of people that are doing it? If they're not, you know, maybe it isn't such a great idea. If it's being used regularly, then it's worth some more discussion.
Okay.
I'll definitely reach out. I think I do have an issue because we're not committing. It's not like I'm giving $5,000 to a not-for-profit for them to run a program. We're doing it internally. And the guidelines are that the funds need to be committed by December 31st. But
So
I'll
they'd be held into our account, right? Versus if we were writing a check to some outside organization and they were then taking the money.
Yeah,
and allocating.
that's my
Okay.
issue. But I definitely, I'll reach out and see what they're doing.
Okay.
The other one is, we've talked about at Academy how we're intending to have a community flagpole as part of that project when it's all built out. And I don't know the status of the grounds around it, but I'm wondering if we can't move forward with a community flagpole sooner rather than later. Why does it have to wait until Academy is done? And so I'm proposing the cost of installing a flagpole where people could petition to have the flag of their particular cause flown.
I think there's a couple of things we could probably talk about Academy, because I think there's a lot of projects that are spinning out, from that, besides just renovating the building. So I think that's one we can certainly, and I'll be coming forward with some options also for Academy, for ARPA funding. But I think that's a worthy discussion also, to talk about that. So, and a lot of this depends on how much money we actually have left too, right? I mean, some of these are smaller, some of them are going to be larger. So
I hear you
that's
say that
fine. We
you've
can
had-
add that. We can add that to the list. I think we need to find out, we'll have to get an estimate of what that would cost.
I hear you say you've asked ABC House for a request at this point. Because I know they've approached both Bruce and I. We've had quite a few discussions. They're obviously, to your point, they have an ongoing project right now, and I'm hugely supportive of helping them, given it aligns with our strategic plan. So I think it's a really good use of funds. So I want to advocate for that.
Well, Bruce, you've been kind of the primary person speaking to them recently. Did you convey to them that they would need to submit a kind of memo, outlining what type of funding they're looking for, what it would be used for? It's for the project, I'm assuming.
Right. So the discussion was funds to help offset the actual construction costs. This is a full. They've essentially gutted the house and are redoing it. We didn't talk specifically about the form of application. It really is, I think, the consensus amongst the board, our board, to support this, and then we certainly could give them the application that we've asked other groups to do. Although we probably could just do it, right? As we have the discretionary powers to assign the money.
Yeah, but I think it would be good to have it laid out, because that form kind of went through about what the project is, the total project cost, how much funds
we
they're
definitely,
asking for it.
we would definitely, yes. I think we have a good intuitive sense of what it is.
Right.
And we've even talked about, we wouldn't expect it to go towards anything that might appear to be frivolous, right? We're not looking to put 60-inch TVs in every bedroom kind of thing. This is the bones of the house that we're talking about. And those related costs. And I mean,
Okay,
and
so we can talk, I can talk offline with them to guide them to what would be the appropriate request, to put through. And then that would be part of, what we would discuss at the next meeting when we kind of start whittling down and allocating the funds.
okay. Can we talk about the first three items in this considered list?
Yeah, yes.
So
So they have submitted a formal request. These three items.
So I mean, right out of the gate, I have a concern that, less than a month after the budget referendum, there's a request from the district for band uniforms. That they didn't include it in their budget, and now they're looking for it outside of the budgeting process. That, and I'm having trouble understanding how this is an ARPA candidate. I'm not sure how band uniforms really fill the vision and mission of the money.
Well, so there was a lot of conversation at the Board of Finance about these band uniforms. The Board of Finance did make, what was the reductions that was taken out of the Board of Education budget, Stacy?
240.
$240,000. And so in conversations, similar to what we've done with the police department, we said, are there some non-recurring things in here that would make sense to fund outside of the budget process? Don't build it into the base budget, because they do these every 10 years. This is actually beyond 10 years that they replace these uniforms. They get dry cleaned, and the Board of Education can't save up. They can't have accounts, savings accounts for things like we can do. So they have to put it into their budget, and this is kind of a large nut. So when they got this reduction from the Board of Finance handed to them, they kind of looked at things and said, okay, well, this is a non-recurring expense, and maybe there's a way we could get this funded through another source. Some members of the Board of Finance suggested ARPA, possibly looking at ARPA. We've given money to a lot of sports organizations, right, through ARPA. We've used it for lighting, for youth soccer. We've used it for lighting for Little League. We've did it for the tennis courts at hand. So the thought was that, the band needs these new uniforms, they're expensive, and ARPA would be an appropriate source for that. So for timing, it's just more they want to get moving on it if they can get this funded. So that's kind of how they submitted the request to ARPA.
Doesn't the Board of Ed typically return funds every single year back into the fund?
They have. Last year, they returned 226,000 that we in turn, we just put that into the special ed reserve.
In returning that 200 and whatever thousand, couldn't they just, I'm playing a shell game here, but couldn't they return a little bit less and just get the uniforms?
We don't know where we're going to end up this year yet.
When do you think you'll have that visibility?
We keep the year open through July because things trickle in. So I would say it would be at least through the end of July.
Well, Scott, I think you're onto a good idea. They can spend their money any way they want. When do they have to make their commitment on what they return? In the end of July?
Well, it's not finalized till the auditors come out in October. Everything needs to be encumbered by June 30th. if we want to use the current year funds. So they would need to decide in order, actually place an order by June 30th. When I said things are open, that number could change what's returned to the town because invoices could roll in July. They shouldn't, but they usually do. So we don't know that final number that would be returned until the end of July. But if they were going to use the funds, everything needs to be encumbered and a PO issued and the item ordered by June 30th.
Is there a way they can do that? Is there a way they can do line item transfers to create $80,000 and place an order?
I'm sure that could be a discussion, yeah, that if that's something that they want to do. They would just, like I said, we'd have to commit to it and order it by the end of the month.
So,
It's a good way to do it if they already have the money.
Yeah.
well, I think that we have to
comfortable.
see where that is, and we're not voting on this today, so, I think that perhaps let's put it on hold and then see where they land and where we land, because there's a lot of competing interest, obviously, for the, remaining ARPA funds, right? So
It
I'm
is,
thinking-
it is that, but there's also, I'm uncomfortable with them cutting 80,000 out of their budget and then turning around a month later and asking for it back.
So they were guided to do that in the sense that, just like we did with the police department, Bruce. We have several items that we're doing appropriations for. We didn't think it was a recurring expense, and we said we will fund it outside of the process. We're gonna do appropriations or fund it through this new CNRE account that we're setting up, right? So I'm just saying, it's not like they are trying to do anything. They were guided that this was kind of the approach of taking out these non-recurring items. We will not have $80,000 in their budget next year, right? Because that's what we said, we don't want to roll forward an $80,000 line item that is non-recurring. So that's why they took it out of the budget.
But they didn't receive that guidance from us. They received that guidance from the Board of Finance, and
No, they were following our lead. This is the conversations we've had this is the 5th budget year where we've looked at staff and said, and as a board, we've said, we don't do that for their budget, right? Because we don't weigh into their line items, but we have done that for our budget multiple times. We've taken things out that were non-recurring and said, let's fund this outside of the budget so we don't grow the base budget, right? That's been the philosophy. So I'm just saying, I don't feel like they're doing anything wrong. They're just asking, they're saying, we pulled this out, we had a big reduction in our budget, and now we'd like to fund this through, we'd like to see if we can get this funded. The band needs uniforms. So if we say no to this, can they find it through their end of year money? Maybe they can. So we can table it for now. But I don't know how their, numbers are going to play out at the end of the year. That's all. So I would hate to just say we're dismissing it for ARPA, because what are you going to tell the band? We just spent all this money on soccer lights and, lighting for baseball teams and tennis courts, all this money going to athletics, and you're going to tell the band you're not going to get new uniforms for another couple of years?
well, no, what I would say is the Board of Ed chose to cut this out of their budget. I don't see how this is the fault or the problem of the Board of Selectmen, and
It's fine.
No,
Well,
I'm not saying
obviously,
the band
people,
doesn't need new
we're going to
uniforms.
talk about this more later. I just think, and if they can find the money, that's obviously the message you're sending. Try to find the money in your leftover funds at the end of the year, right?
Yes, and you're right. We're not making a decision about this today. We're discussing it, and I guess I'm expressing my discomfort in the way this has come up. So I think also with the I don't understand what a pre-K consortium is. So I'm having a tough time understanding why it's a ARPA.
So this is a group of, they've started getting together, all the different, it really kind of started during ARPA or during COVID. And it's all the pre-K programs in town, and the school district is a host of it. And they get together and they have, educational discussions, they troubleshoot, they talk about a lot of different things. And I attend one of these meetings, the superintendent attends occasionally. And I forget what the specific request was for Stacy. They wanted to do is this a educational thing? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
it was for practice development. for
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah, and this is obviously that's a part of demographic that was hit a lot of the pre-K programs and dealing with young children during COVID, and so that this kind of spun out of that.
Is this an annual expense or is this a one-time 2,000?
I believe this is a one-time 2,000
Or do we know what it's for?
for training.
There's a memo for all this stuff, but we weren't
It is
voting
in
on
your
these
packet.
today. This was just supposed to be, here's some stuff that's coming down the pike. So there's been memos submitted for all of this.
Was that in our packet?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
But it's not, this is going to be coming when we talk about it at the next meeting, so. Similar to downtown lighting, there's going to be more detail. That was something we pulled out of the budget, right? And said we didn't want to build it into the base budget anymore, and so let's fund it through ARPA for this year. And then moving forward, we'll hopefully have a reduced amount in the budget. And then I talked about the other things, but we're getting information on all that. So there'll be backup and all that when we're actually going to be going through a more detailed review of this stuff.
Yeah, and forgive me, I mean, I know that we've done, these specific conversations that you're referencing, Peggy, when we are talking about the school district, I just want to make sure that their budget is 3 times or more than 2 times bigger than the town's budget. I want to make sure that they're fully utilizing that budget before it starts coming out of the town end. And if it's an appropriate use, then of course I'm going to be supportive of it. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about a Board of Ed budget that is almost $70 million. And they're asking for 2,000.
Well, that is not the school district that's asking for that. It's this group that, it's kind of a loose affiliation. It's not the school district's group, right, Stacy? This was just
Right.
more Dale had started this and as kind of the host of it. And it's been a good thing for the community. I went to one of these last month or 2 months ago, and they sit around and talk about whatever issues are impacting, because remember, all the kids that go through these pre-K programs are now going to be funneling into the kindergartens in Madison Public Schools. So, and interestingly, I learned there that they all have wait lists now. So that's helpful information, that, you have a lot of young families and a lot of demand has come back for these programs. So, but anyway, that we should save that conversation for, future discussion. No, and I'm not trying to jump on you about the band. I just find it's been interesting because I've been living with the band uniforms now for 6 months, through the budgeting process. And, and I just feel like somehow we got to get this done for them, because I think the band deserves to have new uniforms. They're over 10 years old. So if it's not going to be here and it's going to have to be through leftover funds that the district decides, fine. I just want to, it's a worthy cause, I guess is my point, right? And how it gets paid for, I guess, is ultimately going to be up to the boards to decide. But that's where I just get a little, because for some reason this seems to create more contention and discussions than when we talk about the lighting for soccer, or the lights at the baseball field, or the tennis courts. So there's a lot of good things that we funded for the schools through ARPA. I guess is my point. Plus we did the lighting at Daniel Hand for the stage That was also ARPA, where we, those were all CIP projects that we helped, get over the finish line with additional funding because they were coming in over budget. So we have helped the school district a lot with the ARPA funds. Whether or not this is the right one now, maybe not, but I just wanted to make sure that we're not, we're showing support for the purpose, I guess.
And I think my only addition to this particular portion of the conversation is, okay, so these band uniforms are 10 years old. What happens 10 years from now when they need more uniforms? Why is the school not making these uniforms as much of a priority as the uniforms for other sports?
Well, those are done those are much lower. They have a uniform fund.
Oh, I know,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying overall, it is the responsibility of the schools to make sure that all of these things are being funded appropriately across the board. They make priorities for the theater department, they make priorities for athletics, not just with uniforms, but also with fields and whatnot. So this is just kind of more of a forward thinking comment, is that 10 years from now, are they going to ask for $80,000 or more because prices of things go up? So there might just need to be some changes in the way they do things.
Well, I think they actually may have the opportunity to start saving accounts, which they don't have the ability to do that with some of the legislation that was passed. So that is going to be a conversation I'm sure that the Board of Ed is going to have. They do not have to, we haven't seen all the details yet, but the state legislature is allowing Board of Eds to keep some of their funds now at the end of the year and set up savings accounts. So that would help with these types of things, right?
Yes.
Because they did
Okay,
not
good.
have the capability of doing that before.
Listen, I think nobody's trying to make this hard for the Board of Ed. So let's state that out loud. I think, we want to support these uniforms. I think the question is whether or not they can use existing funds, and the calendar's ticking. We're already June 11th right now, and Stacey, you're saying that they have to do it by the 30th of the month. So that's kind of tricky at this point. So we don't want to, miss the opportunity to get these uniforms too.
Okay, so I think that
We're
to be
beating a dead
continued.
horse.
But obviously I think that the school is hearing the message that they want, the board would prefer that they find funds within their existing budget or remaining funds for the end of the year to get these uniforms paid for, right? It's a priority for them. So that sounds like the message I'm hearing. But we're not voting on anything today, and we have a lot of requests that we're going to have to review in the coming weeks and months. And have to weigh priorities. So
okay. The ADA upgrades, are those a CIP project? Are those already in the schedule?
So go ahead. No,
I don't know much about it,
yeah,
but I do not believe it's in the 5-year plan right now.
it isn't. It was something that Austin kind of flagged more recently, and I think originally he was going to use that grant that came from the
COVID
state.
money.
Instead, because they had all those issues with the kitchen, he had to prioritize the kitchen. Could this get put into CIP and wait? Yes. It's basically, I don't know if you know, but at the surprisingly, the bathrooms at the senior center, I think they want to have push doors. Is that what they're doing on this? I forget, Stacy.
I don't know the details of that.
Yeah, it's the way the doors and everything are in those bathrooms are not the easiest if you're dealing with walkers or wheelchairs. So this was something he just flagged as a project he wanted to go for. Is it and he's not here to talk about it, but he will be when we actually go through the requests again. If it does not get funded by ARPA, he will be putting it into CIP.
Okay, and that's just to show that I'm not picking on this school district.
I know.
Dropping in a project, I yet that it's less than $30,000. And we've talked about these smaller one-time things, but I would be more comfortable with the project coming up as a CIP and then having us divert it into some other plan if we felt there was an imperative to it, rather than it just show up out of the blue.
Yeah, I mean, I think
the flip side of this whole argument too, at the end of the day, if these 3 projects come back with all the money at the end, at the bottom of this spreadsheet, the reality is we may have $522,000 to allocate soon. So we may need to fund all of this stuff. So, we may have too much money, which is a good problem to have, by the way.
Yeah, it is. And, I think the other option is, if we don't want to fund all these smaller projects, we can pick one big project out of CIP and just pre-fund it now, right? That's coming up. But okay, so once again, the intention was not to have a project by project review today, Bruce. So it was more just flagging some things for future conversation. And so we'll have the backup, we'll have the, staff member here so they can adequately speak to the request. But so this will be to be continued. But at least now you guys have a sense of how much, this is a good problem, right? It's a good thing. That we're going to be able to get some more stuff done with the funds, which I think is a positive thing. So with that, though, I guess really the item number 11 is just to return those project balances. So we do need to vote on that, and that goes to the Board of Finance on Wednesday. Discuss and take action to approve the return of ARPA project balances totaling $159,812 to the ARPA fund.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and that's just that list of stuff that closing out of accounts. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that'll get us to 221 now. So we officially have that balance, and then to be continued going after that. Item number 12 is discuss and take action to approve an application to the BGA fiscal year 24 burn discretionary community project grant for $113,900 for Madison Youth and Family Services Police social worker position.
So moved. Second.
All right, great. And we have Scott. This is one of the federal community directed spending grants that we received, were awarded in March. And so I'll let Scott speak to this. This was, just to remind everybody, this was a position, we had a pilot program 2 years ago. We put in the budget, we decided let's hold off, and because we were going after grants, and now we've come through with an actual grant to fund to continue the pilot program with a grant. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, Peggy. So, and just for clarification, the grant amount is actually $114,000 flat. I don't know if that needs to be reflected accurately in the agenda or the minutes, but that's.
Oh, okay.
We requested 13.9, and they came back and offered funding, invited us to apply for the funding at 114. And this was, as you mentioned, a grant that we were encouraged to go and find, short of bringing it into the town budget following the pilot back in 2022. That was a very successful pilot. We do have pretty extensive write-up around the pilot if anyone is interested in that. For the purposes of the Burn Community Project Grant that we've been invited to apply for, which is this grant, it's based off the pilot. The idea would be for us to hire and place a part-time social worker to create a position for that, hopefully long-term, but for the project purposes for this grant, we have a 2-year grant term. We have got enough money in that grant to fund 2 years at 24 hours a week based on the hourly rate that we would propose for this position, and we used our current clinical positions here at MYFS. Since we've got similar positions, we use those as a bit of a marker for comparison for this position. Myself, Chief Drum, Lieutenant Jeremy York, we've worked very closely together in putting together not just the concepts for this, but now putting pieces as that we would want in this position. So for the purposes of this morning, I did have to write extensively for this grant. So it did require, in order for us to secure the funding, a very specific budget. I had to write towards an abstract, a narrative that included very specific goals for this, which I have done. I'm happy to share with people. I did share the abstract as a part of the documents for this morning, if you're curious to look at that. And really just thought of the goals as what we would want to show at the end of this 2-year term that we could then bring back to the boards for consideration if we want to continue this. We would foresee this position, I think, important for everyone to hear, really just extending social work outreach into the community as a part of policing. And we did find in the pilot, as well as I think these programs have really grown across the country, a lot of benefit to having social workers on site, not just to assist police, but to have a leg in the door, a connection to folks at that point where there's a human service need that they then can follow up with. So it is very much about supporting police and supporting people in crisis moments in the community, and equally, and maybe in some cases even more importantly, the follow-up and helping people connect to resources and really kind of creating an experience for people when they've had an intervention with the police to have an opportunity to kind of work that through. And then hopefully if there was something about a need that gets addressed and carried through. And these programs across the country have shown enormous impact in terms of how people experience the police, experience their connection to their town and their support. So it's a grant. It's going to pay for the salary, some overtime, and training over the next 2 years that we would like to put in place.
Okay. And one of the things I want to comment is just to clarify, because there's this misnomer out in the public about this is somehow tied to academy. This has nothing to do with it. The person is not going to be sitting. Well, they will be sitting in academy, or no, they're going to be sitting at the police department.
They'll be at the police. Yeah.
So they're going to be sitting at the police department.
Hopefully they'll stop by if we're in academy and they want us,
Yeah. When the youth and family moves to academy, they may, right. But so there's no correlation or link or whatever at all between this and what is going on with academy. But I think it's going to be a great opportunity. These programs have been so successful in other communities, and ours was very successful as a pilot program. So, so I don't know if there's any additional questions about this?
Not a question, but just to build on what you said, Peggy, not only is it not part of that, but it's also represents an effort on the part of Youth and Family Services and the PD to get out in front of what we expect to be legislation that will begin to mandate that these functions are in each town. And so rather than wait and be hit cold with a mandate, where we've been doing, and Scott and Chief Drum have been working proactively to build this out, experiment with it, fine tune it, so that when the day comes, which it probably is, that it's mandated, we'll be in a great position to have this program mature.
Very fair point.
Yeah. Any other questions on this?
Shall we vote?
Okay, great. So I'm going to amend my motion to amend the dollar amount to $114,000. And with that, can I get a second on that? To the amendment?
Second.
Okay, great. So with that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. All right. Thanks, Scott. And, excited to see this move forward. So,
my thanks to Chief Drum and Lieutenant York. They've been just tremendous partners in this effort. So just want to extend my thanks to them and look forward to continuing to work with them and all the police.
Great.
With that, have a good day, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Item number 13 is discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request for $22,000 from the Madison Police Department from the undesignated fund balance to the MPD communications account for end of year overtime reconciliation pending Board of Finance approval.
Moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, Stacy, just want to give a one-liner on this. Oh, and Jack is here as well.
Sure. We had a couple of open positions during the year. We also signed a collective bargaining agreement and we had to pay some retro. So that kind of made the account over. So hopefully going forward next year, I believe we're fully staffed, that this hopefully will not be an issue next year. Jack, is that pretty much it?
I would say you're spot on.
And the reason we have to do, because we've had other special appropriations on the MPD, right? So that's why we're voting on a $22,000, right? Just a reminder. Because we're over the threshold. Can you remind the board and me again, the threshold?
I believe special appropriations, we're still having the boards approved. Anything over 250 goes to town meeting. And then line item transfers within
that's what I'm thinking. The line item transfers. That's
over $20,000
okay.
needs to come to the boards.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Great.
know it's so new rules.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you. Okay. Item number 14 is discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request for $69,400 from the Madison Police Department from the undesignated fund balance to the MPD Police Services account for overtime special duty pay pending Board of Finance approval.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, this is the kind of mechanics we go through at the end of the year all the time. If you want to just for the public's benefit, explain that again.
Yeah, the account is generally the account set up approximately $40,000. This is the highway construction project. This is when you see an officer behind the AT&T truck to connect to water to work at a construction site. We bill out for the car, we bill out for the officer, we bill out for the insurance, all costs associated with having the officer there. That goes back to the town by way, I believe, your general fund. So generally, this we probably bring in anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 at an income level. This is the way we bring it back to zero every year. And then we've talked about is another way to do this because it appears that you're asking for another $69,000 for an operation line. It's not. Basically, we're returning money that was used to essentially start the construction site program, put the officers out there. At the end of the year, it always shows a plus.
Okay, any further questions? No? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. I know this isn't an agenda item, but Jack, I don't know if you just wanted real quickly, since you're here, to just give a real quick update on the sidewalks, because people might have seen some activity going on Route 1 with the sidewalks. So I just thought we'd use this opportunity real quick, one sentence.
Very good. The crosswalks are up for the town roads, which are adjacent to Route 1 at Lantern Hill and West Wharf. You'll also see them out by Cottage Road. You'll see one going up on Wall Street mid-block. The ones that are on Route 1, we're awaiting a encroachment permit approval so that at this point you see the actual crosswalk then cross Route 1 area at those locations. What we did was we had the equipment, we had to get it out there. We have enough public conversations where people are really beseeching me to get it done as soon as possible. So what you're seeing is the start of the project. It will be completed once we have the permits in place and they put the second crosswalks actually across Route 1.
So it's just helpful to see that there'll be a lot more work going on. We're going to actually be applying for lots of funding to construct the final crosswalks and other improvements and signage and things like that. So that'll be coming to the board to complete that whole. But I think those are going to be great additions and something a lot of people have been asking for. So we have to take each step at a time, right? So, all right. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 15 is discuss and take action to approve a contract with Bove or Bove Brothers LLC for $868,414.98 for the rehabilitation of the Flintlock Road Bridge project and authorizing the first selectwoman to sign all contracts and documents associated with this award. The project is funded through the state, local bridge, and CIP.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. This is one that has been on our list for quite a while, so it's exciting to see this move forward. Rob, I don't know if you just want to give a quick update of what the project is entailing and why we're doing this.
Sure. So, hey, good morning, everybody. Yep. So basically, a few years back, we had, this Connecticut Department of Transportation does their bridge inspections of not just town, but all towns in Connecticut. And recently, they do the over 20 foot bridge spans as well as the under 20 foot bridge spans. The over 20 foot bridge spans, as you know, we had Heatherwood Drive and County Road bridges replaced within the past 18 months to 24 months. The under 20 foot spans, so smaller span bridges, that we found that 2 were in poor condition. We had gotten preliminary applications completed by our consultant and submitted them to the state, and they accepted both of these bridges into the state local bridge program, one of them being Flintlock Road over Huzzle Guzzle, and the other one being Garnet Park. That one's still a little bit of a ways out. That's probably gonna be construction in 25. But in short, this one is a rehabilitation project, so this is not a full bridge removal project. It's just going to be rehab, some new head walls, slip line the pipe, I think. Yeah, and just basically make overall improvements to the exterior of the bridge, as well as where on the downstream and upstream sides of it. It's one side is fronted by land trust property, the other side is fronted by a private property owner. Everyone's on board. We've gotten rights of access to work on both properties to complete the bridge project. In short, the base estimate for construction with 10% contingency was $866,800, and then the low bid by Bove Brothers came in right at within $2,000. So our engineer did a great job estimating this. So the low bid was $868,414.98, as you see in your packet. So it's exciting. This is I'll be a third bridge being either replaced or rehabbed in the past 18-24 months. So we're hoping to get this going probably by mid-July.
Great. I know you guys have had your hands full with a lot of these projects, so thanks for that, and we're excited to see this one go under construction. Any further questions for the board? No? All right, with that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, yep, okay, great, all right. So I think, well, 10 o'clock. I thought we were going to get done earlier today, but a lot of conversation on important things to talk about. So with that, I guess moving on to citizens' comments. Any hands raised? If anybody would like to make a comment, please raise your hand.
No hands are raised.
Okay, going once, going twice.
This is out there. I'm surprised he's not asking a question or comment.
I know. Hello,
can
Gus.
we just do a quick shout out to Gus?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hope you're doing well, Gus.
Good to see your name there, Gus.
And with that, then, I guess hearing no objection, I would like to adjourn the meeting. So, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.